I would say the people who love you and they know the journey you're on and they know where you're going, they'll be okay with some of the sacrifice you have to make.
I believe your yes has cost you everything, but it's gained you even more. Welcome back to Legacy 3N, the now, the next, and the new. I'm so excited about this episode today because I get to share a story of resilience, of legacy, of an empowerment from my daughter, who is 22 years old, Keianna Moyer, and she is going to share a little bit about her story, and hopefully her story will not only affect her future children and those who will come behind her, but her story can empower someone to know that it only takes courage to become. And that's what I want to talk about with Keianna today, the courage to become. Welcome, honey. I want to get right into this because I know you have to get back to Chicago and get ready for class on tomorrow. But I just want to share a little of your story with the viewers because, oftentimes I call you a unicorn. And other times I call you an anomaly because of the things that you do at such a young age, the way you work in ministry, had your degree at 20, your first degree. Well, your first degree, if I may share that with the viewing audience, you actually received your associate's degree before you received your diploma from starting school early. And as a mom, I just sat back and marveled. And as we share our stories of legacy through the next seasons, so many barriers were broken. We shared in a previous episode how my grandmother, who you did get to spend time with 4 years prior to her dying, received a third grade education. And then mom, a bachelor's degree, the first in her family. And then me, a master's degree, which got that in a year, literally 1 year, with a 4.0. Barriers broken to create an even greater legacy as we move through history. But if I may say, as your mom, it made me so proud to watch you get deferred upon you your associate's degree prior to even receiving your high school diploma. And graduated valedictorian, which was still painful to think about because we didn't get to see you walk because of COVID 2020. But a year later, you were working on your bachelor's, and that was at 20, am I correct?
Did I finish it?
20, a bachelor's at 20, a master's at 21, and now at barely 22, you're in school in Chicago and have started your medical degree to be an MD in the next 4 to 7 years, if we include residency. And I could never, ever be more proud to be your mom. And I'm grateful. The way I describe it to others is you belong to God. He only used me as a vehicle to get you here and to nurture you as much as I can, because greatness is not thrusted upon you. It's innate. That's my opinion. That is innate. And you have been great since day one. The funny story is how your grandmother was concerned about you going to school, with you not starting school to pre-K, and she didn't know if you'd be able to function because at that time all you really liked to do was sleep and eat.
That's what I like to do now.
But it's working. It's working. So just so many great memories. And again, I refer to you as a unicorn, but you really are an anomaly today, and other young people need to hear your story. Again, when we started, I said I wanted to coin this episode, "The Courage to Become." But if I must say, even what you do in ministry, I believe your yes has cost you everything, but it's gained you even more. And so I want to just hear from you a little bit. What were your early aspirations to knowing that you wanted to, or shall I say, at what point did you realize you wanted to become a medical doctor?
When I was little, I wanted to be a lot of things. First, I think I wanted to be a teacher, and think I told you that I want to be a teacher.
And I said negative.
And then after a teacher, I wanted to be so I thought, well, these are technically jobs. I wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to be a wife
Preacher, you said.
and a preacher. And that was like middle school. And then once I got to high school, I wanted to be a lawyer for a quick second. And then I'm in high school, sometimes you can do little clubs. I did mock trial in high school. And I was really good at it. I had a really, really great time. But I realized it made me really anxious. And I didn't like the fact that I could have the power to send someone to death based on my ability to be a good lawyer. And so then I decided against that. It was too much risk for me to do that. I didn't want to have that type of power. And then after I stopped doing mock trial because of that. And then towards the end of high school, I got really into some of the harder classes, like harder maths, harder sciences, like biology, stats, calc, pre-cal. And I really liked it, and I knew I was really good at it. And my neighbor at the time was a nurse practitioner. And so at the time, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a great career path because it's only a bachelor's degree. You can go get a master's or a doctorate if you want to, but to become an RN, you just need a bachelor's degree. And it's so flexible with the amount of time that you get, whereas like, and for example, you can do like 312s, and that's a full time schedule, and so you have 3 days on, 4 days off. So I knew that, knowing that I wanted to be a mom, I wanted to have a spouse, and I wanted to also be active in ministry. I was like, oh, that'll be a field where I have a lot of flexibility. I have 4 days off. So the other 4 days of the week, I can be with my kids, I can be with my partner, and I can be in ministry. And then I got to college. It all started to change slowly. First, I dated my first man, and that was like, this is what I'm looking forward to. I was like, mom and wife is great, but I gotta have more aspirations than that, because that was kind of ghetto. And then, so I was like, wow. So although I still was like in healthcare, I was like, wow, I can look at things that are a little more time consuming, because then my aspirations start to change. I still want those things. I still want to be married, and I still want to have a family, but that wasn't all consuming as it was at that point, because I started like to get into relationships and to see what that was kind of like. And I was like, I might want to lean more into my career and see where that takes me. But then in college, I took a class called Anatomy and Physiology. And we had talked about nursing. And you're like, you don't want to be a doctor? I was like, well, it's a lot of time. And at that point, I was thinking about family. I'm like, well, it's 4 years in medical school. It's 3 to 7 years of residency, depending on which field you go into. So it's at least 7 years of my life. And because I wanted a family and I knew I wanted ministry, it was so time consuming that I was like, I don't want to do that. But then, I started to get into my own relationships, and I realized it's not all that it cracks up to be, first of all. But then I took anatomy, and because I was in a pre-nursing field in college at first. And in anatomy, I fell in love with it. I was so excited. Like every day, I was like, wow, did you know? Like, I would come home and I'm like, did you know your kidneys do X, Y, and Z? And that, it just and it even increased my faith in a way, because I'm like, wow, your body and all the organs and all the systems, they work so perfectly together that it just can't happen by chance. That all these things work so perfectly together. Like your lungs depend on your kidneys depend on your liver depends on X, Y, and Z. And so it was so great, and I was so excited, and I'd never been so happy to be in school, that I realized if I kept going on a nursing route, that's where it would stop, because that's the only anatomy class you have to take. And I was like, dang, well, it's going to stop here, and I'll still be providing care, but I won't have the depth of knowledge that I wanted, because I wanted to know more and more and more. But in anatomy, that's kind of where you stopped. And I took microbiology. Now it's super cool. You're just working with bugs all day long, and funguses and worms. And I was like, wow, these things are really, really awesome. And so after kind of like thinking about it and talking to different people, and they're like, well, you can be a nurse, and you can, do your 4 years, go back for your master's, and you can be, by that point, you can be in your 30s. like, you're gonna be 30 anyway. Regardless, you're gonna be 30. So why not be 30 and be a doctor and doing what you want to do? Because time is gonna continue to pass anyway. So when I had some of those conversations with people who actually went for their doctorate instead of doing a nursing degree, they're like, the time is gonna pass. You might as well do what you want to do. You still can have a family. You still can have a spouse. You still can be active in ministry. It may look different than if you were a nurse, but you can still have those things. And that made me feel a lot better when I met people who still had all of those things and were able to go down the MD route.
That was good. That was good. As you were speaking, I was thinking about where you're currently in school. The first scholarship, full scholarship that you were offered, and I always preface with including cost of living, because if you're not astute in understanding the education of a medical career, like I feel like I'm very astute now because I've watched you and I've heard you interview for hours and I have watched your journey. So I've learned so much that I wouldn't know if you weren't on this path. So a lot of times when I say, oh yeah, she's on a full scholarship, I say with cost of living, because when I think of scholarship, I just think of the money part. As I've told you so many before, take advantage of that. Black people don't get that. Take advantage of that. Oh, black people don't get that. So I know, as I was saying to your grandmother, on another episode, favor ain't fair, it's reserved. And favor has been all over your life. And for that, we're grateful. But the first scholarship you were offered, a full scholarship with cost of living, was John Hopkins. What made you choose Chicago over John Hopkins?
A lot of things have transpired since I started college. So, my first year of college after high school, I got connected with a mentor, Dr. Carter, Dr. Sierra Carter at Georgia State University. She's the PI, principal investigator, people who don't know the terminology, of what's called the Heart Lab, Health Equity Agency, Racism and Trauma. And what we do,
Talk a little slower.
Health Equity Agency Racism and Trauma Lab. And I became a research assistant, which means, like, broadly, if you don't know what research is how in science we figure out what works, whether that's in medicine or whether that's in social science and psychology and law. We figure out what works and what's right based on research. And I got connected with her as an assistant in her lab. And what she does broadly, she looks at health outcomes in marginalized and minoritized populations. That all that means is that these are populations that have been pushed to the side. When we think of marginalized, we think of things like people of color, we think of gender minorities, sexual identity minorities, we think of people who are not your typical cisgender heterosexual white man. Anybody who doesn't fit in one of those categories typically are what we determine to be marginalized. And so all of her research centers those populations. And we want to figure out why those populations of people typically have poor health outcomes, whether that be mental health outcomes, physical health outcomes, whether that be disparities in things like the amount of social support they have, their ability to be employed. So we look at a lot of things, and if you talk to people in our lab, they're all doing different things. Like one lab member, he looks at what is Jacob? Jacob, sorry, I don't like doing names, but he looks at sexual and gender minorities and their mental health outcomes. Simone, she looks at things like PTSD and sexual assault and trauma. And then Grace is doing things like the strong black woman schema and emergency, and black women who go to the emergency department. So we all do different things in the lab. But through getting in contact with Dr. Carter, it really shaped what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do in the medical profession, where I want to work with the people who are pushed to the side, the people who are marginalized, the people who need the most care, and the people who, when they don't get the care that they need, they fare worse than people who are the majority group. And so I really fell in love with mostly the black population. I really wanted to work with black women and black children, because when you look at the statistics, black people make up 13% of the population. But when you look at things like infant mortality, maternal mortality, post-traumatic stress disorder, when you look at things like preterm birth, rates of diabetes, hypertension, it is so much worse for black men, women, and children. And the only reason why is not because black people are heavier or they're more impoverished or they are, they have certain attributes. It's because of the history of oppression and racism in the country. And so I worked with Dr. Carter for the last 4.5 years now. It's going on 5 years. And through doing the research and talking to people like Grady and being in the hospital and hearing their stories and just sitting down and talking with them, it really revolutionized the way I thought about the world and what I wanted to do. And so when it came to choosing Johns Hopkins in Chicago, I had to really think about the person I had become in the last 4 years and what really mattered to me. And I wanted to be the doctor that people could go to and they knew I would be unbiased and they knew I would give the best care possible to them and they knew that they could say whatever came to mind and I wasn't going to have any opinion besides my professional and my expert opinion on the care that's best for them. In Chicago, when I went, it was so diverse, like the student body, the administrators, the city. I was immediately surrounded with people who looked like me and people who cared about the same thing. One thing they recruit when they're recruiting students is people who care about diversity in medicine, whether that's by race, whether that's by sexual orientation, by nationality, by language. They care about diversity. And when I was talking to students, I was like, wow, y'all are like, y'all doing the same things I'm doing. Y'all care about the same things I care about. Y'all want to make national and international change. Y'all want to make sure that people in this country who are oppressed are coming out of that oppression and we're reclaiming our place as, I don't want to say regular humans, but we're reclaiming our status as just the average person because the history of slavery and the history of oppression in this country, whether it's by, this can get very long, but to make it shorter, the people that I was surrounded by when I went to Chicago, they cared about things I cared about. When I went to Hopkins, it's a great school. It has a great reputation. The students were not necessarily as diverse. I was probably one of like 10, 15 people of color in the room. Then it was a very young population. I'm young, but I don't think I act very young, and so people around me acted very young. I didn't really care for that. But also, I just knew that their research interests, the things they wanted to do, it didn't resonate with me. They are more like basic science research or, cancer research. All that's important, and I don't want to, demean the importance of that. But it wasn't the things that resonated with me. So when I was looking at the options on paper, maybe Johns Hopkins is the better school. But if knowing the doctor I want to become and the people I want to be surrounded with and the people that I want to mentor me and the people that I know will advocate for me, I think I found that more at Chicago.
I remember that when we went to the second look at Chicago, when you would come back to where we were staying, when you came back, you beamed. And I had not seen that at any of the other second looks. So you definitely are in the right place. And again, I'm grateful. And I just want to challenge any young people who are listening to take advantage of every opportunity that there is that you can take advantage of. The sky really is the limit, but you have to research. You have to do your best at whatever it is so that you can shine. And I say that because it's unheard of for you to be 22 years old and already published. Your love for research came from the scholarship that you got as valedictorian. Part of the presidential scholarship for Georgia State is the opportunity to research, to travel abroad, which she did. She traveled abroad prior to that, but part of that scholarship afforded you the opportunity to gain the knowledge and the experience that you have as a researcher. So now it's unheard of for a 22-year-old to have that on your resume, that you're already published and that you have almost 4 years of experience as a researcher. And so that scholarship has opened so many doors, and your resume is going to open so many doors. And this scholarship has led to another scholarship, and just the courage to become is something that anybody can do with hard work. I want to ask you, speaking of hard work, how difficult has it been to navigate being such an astute Christian? The way you believe, the way you carry yourself as a kingdom young person, the way you love ministry. You have been on the prayer line as an intercessor before you were 16, the first and only child on that line, and something you took to heart, and you did it as well as the 50 and 60-year-old intercessors, and the dedication that it has taken to balance that with studying abroad, to balance that with your studies enough to become valedictorian 2 times over. Because if I may share, you were valedictorian of an 8th grade class. And so God has been good to you. But for your part in that love affair, how difficult has that been?
It's not as hard, I think, as people think. Like people have asked me in high school or and in college, people I've been friends with, like when they see everything that I do on a daily basis, especially when it comes to getting in med school. Getting in med school is hard. Oh my gosh. It is so many hoops you have to jump through. You have to get research and you have to get volunteer hours. You have to work in the hospital. You have to get good grades. You have to pass the MCAT. And it's so many hurdles to jump through. The people ask me like, oh, you did X, Y, and Z, like, and then you're still doing things outside of school. How hard is it? There were times where it was very difficult because it is very time consuming at times where, I have choir rehearsal, then I have dance practice, then I have prayer line, then I have Bible study, then I have Sunday service. So sometimes I was at church Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then I still had to go to work, and I still had to go to school, and I still had to do other things. But it was easy because those were things I wanted to do. So even when it comes to applying to medical school, I tell people all the time, people who have asked me about like application and the process, do things that you want to do, because if you don't want to do it, number one, it's going to show that you don't want to do it, and if you don't want to do it, number two, it's going to feel like you don't want to do it. And so I always took that to heart. So when it came to applying to med school, I only did things I wanted to do. I only volunteered at places I wanted to volunteer at. I only worked at hospitals I wanted to work at. Y'all know I've been to like 3 to 4 different. I worked at every hospital in Atlanta because there's just a couple hospitals I did not want to work at, and so I had to transition. I only researched the things I wanted to research. I had a position earlier on last year in a lab that I was not completely committed to, and it showed. And so I had to stop doing it. But because I wanted to do those things, because that was my lifeline, that's where church has always been the place for me where I go to get joy, I go to get strength, I go to get fueled up. That's my church family is there. Those are all my friends, my family are there. And so it wasn't difficult because I wanted to do those things. And it wasn't hard to juggle because it was like, yes, I might be spending 20 out of the, I don't even know how many hours in a week, out of the 100 something,
168.
168 hours a week. I'm more than that then. I must be spending like 20, 30 hours at church. But the result of that shows in my life. The result is joy. The result is peace. The result is that
Favor.
yeah, I get favor with the Lord. So it's not necessarily difficult for me. And I think that shocks a lot of people. But I always tell people, if you do the things that you want to do, not because you have to do them, but because you want to do them, it shows in the results, but it also shows in how you feel about it.
That was good. That's good. As we just get ready to wrap up, and I feel about you the way I felt about interviewing or having a conversation. It's not an interview. Having a conversation with your grandmother, that we're going to have to come back because somebody needs to hear more of your story to be empowered, to get in a place to empower, because you know that that's what we believe in. We believe in being empowered so that we can empower. Sacrifice. You have made so many sacrifices to, and I've watched, I'm your mom, to get to where you are today. And there has been, earlier I said, your yes has cost you everything but gained you even more. With that said, share with the viewers who are struggling and need to know that it's never too late to be great. Just 3 things that you can share, 3 short points that would encourage them on their journey of greatness. Just 3 things that you can say, I recommend, or I suggest, or I did this, that could help somebody as they journey on to know that they can do anything they want to do, but it comes with what? What pieces of advice?
I would say one thing I've gotten really comfortable with is delayed gratification, not having to have everything I want when I want it. So that means like medical school is a process of delayed gratification. It really is, because people say all the time, "Oh, you're gonna be making big doctor money." I'm like, yeah, in like 10 years. Like I will one day, but not right now. Especially with a lot of students having to go $200,000-300,000 in debt, and they have to pay off that debt first, and then so it's a lot of delayed gratification. You don't get exactly what you want when you want it, but as you're going through the process, every step is the next step towards this final journey or this final goal. So one thing I always think about, when I have to make sacrifices, is, yeah, maybe I can't have this exact thing right now, but one day I will. I tell people all the time, one thing that's kept me sane is knowing that one day I won't have to work so hard. Like, I tell people all the time, like when I'm studying or if I'm volunteering, I'm working. I remember one time I was working at a children's hospital and I was working nights for weeks on end, and I was so exhausted. And people would tell me, like, why are you doing that? Like, just quit or do something else. You don't have to do that. You don't need to make no money. Your school's paid for, all that. I'm like, well, yeah. But one day I have to work hard now, and then one day I don't have to work as hard. I'm still gonna be working, but I'm not gonna have to work as hard. If you get all your hard work done right now, it's almost like the when you think about procrastination. The longer you wait, the harder you're gonna have to work. So if you work hard now, when the deadline comes up, you've done all the hard work. So that would be my first point, is to get really comfortable with the thought of delayed gratification, that it's not happening for you right now, but one day it will, and always have that hope and that faith. The second thing I think that's been really helpful for me to think about is that, to me, and this is maybe specific to my journey, but medicine, it's one of the fields where you can make the most impact. And I think your health is the most important thing in your life. You could lose your home, but you have your health, you'll be all right. You could lose family members, you could be in a grieving process, but you still have your health, so you're all right. You could face loss in several areas of life, but if you have your health, you're still alive, you're still here, you're still able to function. So I think for me, medicine is one of the areas that has the ability to impact a person's life so broadly, that it makes me so excited to know that I can show the love of Christ in a very major way. And that doesn't mean like I'm going to go preaching to my patients and tell them about Jesus, but that just means that through the decisions that I'm making right now, I'll be able to make a huge impact, to be a disciple in a very, very big way. Where that could just be, praying for my patients before I talk to them, or after I talk to them, saying a prayer or saying a word of intercession over them. And that, for me, it's like, it goes along with the delayed gratification part, that once I'm done with the journey, I have the ability to make such a huge impact that it's worth it to me. And I have the ability to have such a flexible schedule that I can still do everything I want to outside of work and not take work home with me, because the field in itself is very flexible. So that's delayed gratification. And then second, I would say, as a believer, knowing that part of my walk, my journey with my faith, is being able to make a huge impact on people's lives. And maybe last, when it comes to making sacrifices, I don't know what I would say last. That's a hard one.
What about the lonely part of your journey with not dating? So it's not that you can't, but because you're tunnel focused on your vision of what you want the future to look like.
Yeah, it can be lonely sometimes. I would say with me, and specifically, I've become more. I'll take this back. I've become more of a people person as I get older. But as growing up, I was never a people person anyway. So I was so used to reading books for myself, being alone,
The library.
going to the library. I
Yeah,
take home
20
like,
books.
yeah, 20 books at once. I'll read them all. They be late. I get mail that's saying I got a $20 fee because I didn't return these books. I still got a fee at Rockdale County
Wow.
Library that I never paid. I can't ever go back to that library. But so the loneliness as a child, I mean, even now, it didn't really bother me all that much, because sacrificing time with friends or sacrificing maybe a relationship wasn't a big deal to me, because I knew, from being a believer, I think part of the walk is knowing that what God has for you is going to be for you. So one of the things I say all the time is I'm going to do my part and then I'm going to let God do the rest. So I knew that whatever was for me wasn't going to pass me by, whether that was a friendship, whether that was a relationship, whether that was a connection or a network that I needed. I knew it wasn't going to pass me by. And I always make sure that as much as I do my part. So one thing I'm working on this season is being a better friend because I'm so used to like kind of being to myself. I forget that friends need time and they need you to spend time with them. And that may be like normal to everybody else, but that's not normal to me. Like I can not talk to you for 6 months and I'm still think we friends because like we've always been friends. Why would we not be friends? And they're like, you ain't talked to me in 6 months. I'm like, well, hey, like I thought we were still cool. I know we not friends just 'cause I didn't talk to you. But people, I forget like because I'm just so used to it and used to kind of being to myself that I have to work on some things with friendships. But to me that wasn't a big sacrifice because the people who love you know the journey you're on and they will accept you for it. So if I was at like a party or if I was at like a sleepover and I had my computer open and I was doing work, they would talk about me like I had three heads. Like, why are you doing homework or why are you writing a paper and we're at a party? I'm like, well, I got work to do. And they're like, all right, we're gonna leave you alone. They understand because they know the journey you're on, and people who respect the journey that you're on, respect you, and they love you, they're gonna be okay with the sacrifices you have to make with those relationships. When it comes to dating, dating's kind of ghetto these days, and so I'm not missing out on much. Right. Like even the dating that I have done, it's been I won't say it's been awful, but it's been a lot of things, and so I'm not missing out on nothing. I was like, whenever God sends me my spouse, I'm gonna need him to Jesus himself to come to earth and whisper in my ear, "This is your spouse," because I'm over
I
the dating
probably
scene.
can whisper for
No,
you.
it's okay. I think I want God Himself to come and tell me that this person is supposed to be with me because the dating scene in this day and age, is it's really really bad. So even when it came to dating, when I was younger, I think it was a bigger deal because as you get experience, you don't have experience. So when you get those experiences, you kind of know what it's like. At the times when I didn't know, it was like even that didn't bother me because I saw the relationships my friends were in and they weren't that good either. And I saw like y'all's relationship, you and my dad, and y'all's relationship is so different than what people do nowadays. Like some gender roles are good. I say like I tell my friends all the time like bring back gender roles. Like I don't necessarily want to be a homemaker, but when it comes to dating, there are some gender roles we should leave alone. Okay. And because those gender roles have been completely demolished when it comes to dating and like a male and female relationship, I have not missed out on much. So to answer your question overall, it doesn't bother me. But some people who it may bother, I would say the people who love you and they know the journey you're on and they know where you're going, they'll be okay with some of the sacrifices you have to make. Just be sure that as you're sacrificing, you're not sacrificing too much. So the people who love you, keep in contact with them. You're gonna need them. You're not an island by yourself. You need people. Everybody needs somebody. Yeah, we all need God, but you also need somebody here. We are made in pairs. We're made not by ourselves, but one in another person. And so you do need someone. So always keep those doors open. Don't shut those doors completely. Just communicate that you may not be able to spend as much time with that person, or you may not be able to devote as much energy to certain things like you have in the past.
That was good. Thank you. Thank you for this. And I'm always inspired to watch as your mom and to watch our legacy increasing through the choices that you and Tristan, your brother, are making. And as we end, I just want to say that if we're still talking legacy and changing stories for better futures, I would say that the three things that I believe that I've always, since you all have been old enough to understand, said to you all, and I continue to say to you all and to any other young person who is striving to thrive, surviving is not enough. So for anyone who is striving to thrive and create a legacy for those watching, the three pieces of advice that I can say I definitely have preached to you all over and over again is, as you said, work hard now so you won't have to do it later. And I think your dad and I, as a basic educator and a government employee, did pretty well with that, with paying off a house before I was 45 years old. And I said what we did in the profession because we weren't in professions where we made $300,000 or not even $200,000. But we were good stewards over what God gave us, and it paid off. So I would say work hard now, and you won't have to later. I would also say, or I have said to you all, move such in life that your craft or what you have been chosen to do is so great that they need you more than you need them. And you both are doing that. And the last and most important thing is always put God first and to seek him in everything you do and be a good steward over everything that he gives you, and everything else will work out wonderfully. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, and I look forward to, as you move through medical school and continue to grow in God, hearing more of your story. Thank you.